Hello, I'm Matt. I'm an engineer at DataSpark. Today I'm going to walk through the basics of Houston, which is an API for orchestrating serverless workflows. I'll be building a simple data pipeline on Google Cloud Platform with Python. We'll be following the steps from the Quickstart guide on the Houston website. All the code used is available on GitHub, and you can find a link to all of this in the video description. It should take about 12 minutes to finish and can all be done with Houston's free tier. So to get set up, I just need to create an account on callhouston.io and log in. Next I'll go to Account, click on Subscription and activate the free subscription, which gives me free API calls. And to use the API calls I need to generate a key, so I'll click Create, and that's my API key which I need to use in all my requests. So there are 3 steps we need to complete to get this pipeline running. First we need to create a plan for Houston to follow, then deploy a microservice that can execute the plan, and then we need to trigger a mission. So first, to create the plan, I'm going to define mine in Python as a dictionary. So in a new file, I'll create my plan, which needs to have a name, which is a string, and stages, which is a list of objects. So to figure out which stages I need, I've sketched out what plan I'm going to make, and it needs to upload some files, run some queries to clean them, and then once the cleaning is completed, run a report and generate an output based on that. So 6 different stages. Stages also need to have names, so I'll create 2 stages here, and to create a link between them I just add another property which is downstream, and that will give the name of any stages that are dependent on this stage. So that will create this link here between upload and clean. So I'll quickly fast forward to where I've got all 6 stages written up. I've got my 2 upload file stages for the customers data and the sales data. Then downstream of those we've got stages to clean the data, and then finally create a report from the data. I've also made use of the upstream parameter, which is just a different way of declaring dependencies. Here I've said that the report query has both clean stages as upstream dependencies. So another thing I'm going to do is add a stage at the very start, and I'll put both of our upload stages as dependencies. And what this is going to do is make it a bit easier to start the whole pipeline off. So in order to save this in Houston, I first need the Houston Python client, and I'll add the GCP plugin. So I'll pip install that. And then in my Python script, I can import the client, which is a class called Houston, and I will initialize it with the plan we just created and our API key. And rather than hard code the API key, I'll import it from an environment variable. So now to send this plan to Houston, we need to call the save plan method. So I'll just do that now. First, add my API key to the environment, then run that script. And if I pop over to the Houston dashboard, I should see it appear. There it is. So this is looking very similar to what we initially drew. So now for each one of these stages, we need a microservice that's able to execute that stage. So we're going to be using Google Cloud Functions to create our microservice. I'll make a new directory and a new Python file. And again, I'll import Houston. This time I'll use the Google Cloud Platform plugin. I'll need to import my API key again. I'll define the main function that the Cloud function will execute, and this needs to take an event and context as parameters. The event in this case will be a pub/sub message that will contain instructions on what the stage should do. This time we can initialize the Houston client with just the name of the plan we want to use. Then we're able to tell Houston that the stage is going to start. For that we need the name of the stage. For now I'll just hard code it. We call the start stage method with the name and the mission ID. And I'll come back to the mission ID later to explain where it comes from. So once we start the stage, we get some information about that stage, and Houston will also prevent duplicate function runs from trying to run the same stage. We can then go ahead and run the task that this stage is supposed to do. For this example, I'll just have a dummy function that doesn't do anything. And then the final step will be to end the stage, which is just the end stage method, which is pretty much identical to the start stage method. The main difference being that it's going to return the information about the next stages that need to be run. So what we'll do after we get the response from end stage is trigger everything that was contained in that response. Now, if we're using GCP, we have a convenient method we can use called call stage via pub/sub, which will just take the response from end stage and a mission ID, and it will send pub/sub messages to all of those stages. So a mission ID is a unique identifier for each run-through of your plan. We'll need to generate an ID at the start of the run and then carry it through to each stage in the same mission. I can create a mission ID with the createMission method, and this will also tell Houston that a mission is started. And what I'll do is I'll only create a new mission if we're at the start of the mission, i.e. the start stage. Otherwise, I'll just carry forward the mission ID from the previous stage, and where we get that information is from the event that triggered the cloud function, which in this case is a pub/sub message. The contents of the message are inside the data attribute of the event, and we need to decode that and JSON parse that, which you can do with a convenient extract stage information method. So now for any stage that isn't the start stage, I'll get the mission ID from the event data that triggered the function. And finally, I just need to define the function upload file, and I'll just have it do nothing just for this demo. So we currently have every stage of our pipeline executing the same task, which isn't really what we want. We can make this more dynamic by loading some parameters from our Houston plan. So the way to get your parameters for a stage is to extract them from the stage detail, which comes from the start stage method. So that response contains a parameters object, which will contain all the key value pairs that we set in the plan. So to set a file name parameter, I'll just add a params attribute to this stage in our plan. And then I need to add a key value pair for file name, which I'll just set to the name of the file we want to import. Something I haven't explained yet is how this function is going to know which pub/sub topic to use when it triggers other stages, because we haven't told it what the topic is at any point. So to get around that, we need to add the topic as another parameter, and the call stage via pub/sub function will pick up this parameter and use it. So the parameter is called PSQ, and it just needs to be the name of the topic we end up using. So when I create a topic later, I'll make sure to call it exactly this, which will just be Houston Cloud Function topic. And I'll add that parameter to every stage that needs to be triggered by pub/sub. Now that I've made changes to the plan, I'll need to update it in Houston, so I'll call the delete plan method, and then I'll just call the save plan method again, and we should see the parameters will be added to the plan on the Houston dashboard. You can view your parameters by just clicking on a stage, and they should all be listed out. So I've made some final changes to the function before I deploy it. You can see here I've made the Python executable that gets run dependent on the parameters in the stage that's being run. So that's just a convenient way of making one function carry out different tasks, so we can use the same function across our entire plan. And I've also added these new parameters to the plan and updated it. So my code is now identical to the GitHub repository I linked at the start. Before we deploy it, let's just recap how our infrastructure is going to actually run this plan. We're going to start with a simple message sent with pub/sub that will trigger a cloud function. The message data will contain stage, which will be equal to start, and we've set our function to create a new mission ID when it sees this stage, and then tell Houston that the stage is started and then finished, and from that response it will get the next two stages it needs to run. Those will send messages to pub/sub, which will trigger two function executions at the same time. They'll tell Houston a different stage is starting and use those parameters to run that stage. So each time a stage ends, Houston will tell that cloud function which stages should be next, and the cloud function will trigger those stages with pub/sub. And this pattern repeats until every stage has been completed. So to deploy this function, I can use the Cloud Console. I could also use gcloud, and I explain how to do that in the guide in the Houston website. If you go to Cloud Functions on the Cloud Console, click Create New Function, set the trigger to PubSub. I'll give it a descriptive name. Then I need to create a new PubSub topic that can be used to trigger this function, and I'll have one topic to correspond to one function. The runtime we want to use is of course Python 3.7, and just for simplicity I'm going to copy and paste our functions code into the text editor. So all of main.py gets pasted into the main.py box, and then we'll need to add the requirements as well in the requirements.txt, which I've written here. We only have one requirement. It's a Houston client with the GCP plugin. You can see here in the function we've written that the main function is just called main, so we're going to change the function to execute to main. Finally, we need to add an environment variable. Our function requires our API key to be set in the environment, so I'm going to add that here. I'm just going to paste the value in and then click Create. So to start a new mission, I need to trigger our function. I'm going to click on it, go to Trigger, and then click on the topic here. Then publish a new message. So we want to tell it that the stage is start, and this message data has to be valid JSON for this to work. So that's published the message now, and I can check if it worked by checking the logs of the function. We should see every stage is executed. It looks like they have been. If we go over to the Houston dashboard, we can see a mission has appeared, and we've got green for all stages, which means everything ran as expected.